This is Yin. And these are conversations about discipline, direction, and identity, and how they quietly shape who you become. I want to be honest with you before we start. This is one of the toughest episodes I've ever put together. Not because the topic is complex, but because I don't see the topic the way that most people do. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Most people want power, the title, the seat, the final say. And this episode isn't for them. This is for the people who are going to carry power, whether they asked for it or not. Because power doesn't arrive as a reward. It arrives as weight. And the real question was never whether you'd get it. It's whether you built for it before it found you. Look at anyone who's carried real power for long enough. Not for attention, but for responsibility. The kind where people, outcomes, families, and futures are all relying on that individual. Nobody walks through that untouched. Something gets taken. Sleep, certainty, pieces of you that don't come back the same. That's the part that we don't talk about. Everybody wants the crown. However, nobody wants to discuss what the crown cost the person wearing it. So let's break it down. It's not the hours. You see, most people can survive the hours they put into the work. It's not even the pressure itself. It's the accountability with no ceiling. Every outcome is yours. There's no one above you to hand the weight to, no one to absorb it, no one to hide behind, no one to blame when it all goes wrong. Most people have never carried a single thing in their life that they couldn't give back. That's why power breaks them. Not because they're weak, but because they never trained the part of themselves that knows how to hold the weight that doesn't go away. And that's the part nobody wants to hear. You do not build the capacity for power once it arrives. By then, it's too late. The weight is already there. Capacity gets built before, in private, carrying things nobody claps for, holding standards nobody checks, making decisions that cost you something even when nobody would have known if you didn't. That's what building in silence actually is. It was never about being quiet for the sake of it. It was training. So when real weight finally showed up, it had somewhere to land. The people who survive power usually built the structure before they needed it. The people who get crushed by it usually spent their lives chasing the position without ever building the person who had to stand underneath it. And here's why that matters. Power in the wrong hands doesn't just break the person holding it, it breaks everyone underneath them. Give power to someone who never built the structure to carry it and watch what happens. They do not become stronger. They become scared. And a scared person with power is one of the most dangerous things in the world. They punish people for their own doubt. They make the room smaller so they can feel bigger inside of it. Every decision runs through their ego first and the truth second. You've worked with this person. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The boss who can't be questioned. The leader who mistakes fear for respect. The person who needs control because they never learned how to govern themselves. That is not power. That is insecurity with authority attached to it. And the tragedy is that everyone around them has to pay for what they failed to build in private. And the larger the power, the larger the damage. Because at a certain level, this stops being about one bad boss or one insecure leader. And now it's a company shaped by someone's unhealed ego, a family shaped by someone's lack of discipline, a movement shaped by someone's need for control, a country shaped by someone who never built the internal structure to carry the weight they were handed. That's what makes power so dangerous. Not that it reveals what's unfinished in a person, but that it gives whatever is unfinished reach. So what is actually holding the weight? You've heard me say it a million times. There's three things that you have to build to be fully capable for the weight: discipline, direction, and identity. This is where they stop being ideas and start becoming load bearing. Discipline carries the weight when the motivation is gone. Power is not heavy on the good days. It's heavy at 2 a.m. when the decision is still yours and there's nobody left to ask. It's heavy when you're tired, irritated, uncertain, and the consequences will still belong to you either way. Discipline is what is still standing when all the motivation fades. And without it, power doesn't destroy you all at once. It wears you down slowly in your habits, in your reactions, in the standards you stop holding because you're too tired to keep holding them. That's how the weight wins. Not in one collapse, but by attrition. Direction keeps the weight from turning into meaningless suffering because the same burden can destroy one person and build another. That difference is direction. If all you wanted was the title, the status, the image of being the one in charge, power will eventually crush you because there's nothing underneath it but vanity. But when the burden is tied to something real, a mission, a responsibility, a standard, or a vision bigger than your ego, now the weight has somewhere to go. Now it means something. You have to know why you picked it up. Because if you don't, eventually you'll resent the very thing you asked for. And then there's identity. Identity is what decides what power can and cannot turn you into. Because power will ask you questions most people never have to answer. How much of your patience are you willing to lose? How much honesty are you willing to compromise? How many people are you willing to use, ignore, or step on if it protects your position? What part of your character are you willing to sell just to stay in the seat? That's what identity is for. Identity is your line, your code, your standards, the parts of yourself that were decided before the pressure ever hit. Because if you haven't decided who you are before power tests you, power will make that decision for you, and it usually won't make the one you're proud of. So here's the truth that this whole episode was built around. Power doesn't change you. It reveals you. Everything was already there and never finished. Power drags it into the light where everyone can finally see it. The insecurity, the ego, the lack of discipline, the need for approval. None of that was created by power. It was already in there. Power just removed the place you were hiding it. That's why power is dangerous. Not because it corrupts good people, but because it exposes who the person already was when there was finally no one left to stop them. And when what gets exposed is sitting on top of real responsibility, other people don't just witness the damage, they live under it. That's the part that should scare you. Not that you'll fail quietly, that you'll fail loudly with other people's livelihoods, peace, and trust sitting underneath your decisions. That is why the head gets heavy. Not because the crown weighs anything, but because power finally forces a person to meet who they already were. And not everybody likes what they find. So here's the challenge for the week. Carry one thing you can't hand back, a responsibility that is yours alone, a decision no one else can make for you, a standard you hold even if no one checks it, something with weight on it that can't be passed to somebody else the second it gets uncomfortable. And then sit with it. Feel what it does to you. Feel where your mind goes. Feel the part of you that wants relief, escape, delay, blame, or distractions. That is the work. That is the beginning of building the structure before life forces you to prove whether it was there. Power will find you in your home, in your work, in the lives of the people who trust you. And you do not get to choose the degree ahead of time. You don't get to decide whether life hands you 10 pounds of responsibility or 1,000. You just get handed the weight when it's time. That part is not optional. Because if power reaches you before you've built the structure to carry it, it won't just break you. It'll break through you. and other people will end up paying for what you failed to build in private. That's why this matters. Not because power might destroy your image, but because if you mishandle it, you can damage a home, a business, a family, a team, and a future. All because you waited too long to become someone who could hold the weight without passing the cost to everyone underneath it. So build now. Build before life increases the load. Build before more people are tied to your decisions. Build before your reach outruns your character. Because power is coming. You just don't know in what form or how much your life is going to ask you to carry. So prepare now before your lack of preparation turns into damage that someone else has to pay for. This is Yin. If this resonated, share with someone who needs to hear it. Not everyone, just someone who's ready. You can find Yin Worldwide Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And if you want to go deeper, visit our website at liveyin.com. That's www.liveyin.com. Subscribe if you're committed to the work. If not, that's fine too. This isn't for everyone. Remember, move with intention.